Hello.
Hey, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How about you?
All right. Hello, Morgan. Hello, Jesse. All right, so that's great. Nice to see people here. Amanda, hello. And fellow Jitster. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oops, sorry, my dog's just.
All right.
My dog heard your dog and.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Hussein's there. Okay, that's it. Well, so we had a number of people join the Slack today or this week. I assume that GSOC projects are listed on the INCF website, and so we've got a number of people in the Slack. And Sarka, are you joining our Slack for GSOC or?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. But in the bigger picture, I would like to contribute.
Okay.
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. Love to learn from you guys.
All right, that's great. So could you introduce yourself? What do you do?
So, hey, hi everyone. Myself Sarthak, and I am an engineering student from India. Yeah, and I have a particular love for technology. I love contributing in open source. I love contributing in particularly in government technologies, government open source technologies. I have done some contributions for like the Diksha project, which is a government funded project in India, which helps I guess millions of people to get free education. So I have a love for open source. Yeah, and I love to contribute to this project as well in any way possible.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it.
That's great.
Where in India?
I am from Delhi.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for the introduction. We'll be starting in with some more GSOC related activities in the next few weeks, some more open source. Last summer we did a pretty good open source set of meetings where we would go through and talk about people's projects and then some more outstanding issues in open source. So if you want to get a sense of that, we have a YouTube channel, and for the lab.
Yeah, I checked that out.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty good. Yeah.
Let me plug NeuroFedora too. If you like contributing to Linux packaging, there's NeuroFedora. And there's a meeting twice a month. And IRC meeting twice a month for that. And
actually, I'm a fan of Fedora. I'm actually running Fedora here.
Okay.
It's pretty great distro.
Okay. Good choice.
Yeah, it is pretty it is pretty feature packed. Like it is like cutthroat technology.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a Mac ARM version or a Mac M processor.
It came out recently. Like I searched about that. Yeah, it is pretty great.
Yeah. Well, their OpenGL compliance has now exceeded Apple's.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, this is just on Hacker News.
Yeah, at least Apple user got something.
But I'd love to start was it Nicholas Wirth? Anyway, Nicholas Wirth, the founder of the creator of Pascal, passed recently, and it spurred me to. There's an imaging tool, MRIchron, that's kind of like the most widely used package or project. It's the most downloaded tool on NeuroDebian, and so I'd like to package it plus a couple other neuroimaging tools and get that into NeuroFedora. Anyway, I'd love to see more people join.
Yeah, sure, we'll join. Would love to contribute.
Great. Yeah, so there will be a lot of opportunities coming up in the next few months to start doing something. Hussain, of course, is interested in contributing more to OpenWorm, and so this is something. Yeah, we should bring in more to this group because that's open source, and people have contributed to it. Like they get the occasional person who contributes a lot to it. So those resources though are kind of available to hack, and so that's another opportunity.
I'd like to see it in NeuroDesk as well, since it's a container.
Oh, what is NeuroDesk?
So it's like it's a great project bundling NeuroFedora, NeuroDebian, like all the different distros, because it's a big containerization project. So using containers and using some other technologies from CERN in terms of storage and data labs, it's some other great technologies to promote reproducibility and just good software engineering practices. Anyway, it's and I need to he's saying I need to file a bug report because NeuroDesk is not working on Fedora as it should.
I hope a lot of these software could get a lot better with those sorts of functionality. I think there's definitely a lot of talking. Oh yeah, thanks for introducing me, by the way. For those of you, it looks like there's someone new. Sarthak, my name is Hussain. Nice to meet you. I'm in Indiana. So I've done some previous research through Oral, and I kind of just stopped by here and there, getting involved on various projects and keeping in touch. Right now, I work various freelance positions across tech, research, software. I just finished my graduate studies at the University of Toronto, and I moved back here to the United States. So yeah, nice to meet you. But thanks so much for sharing, Morgan. I think that's really exciting too. I actually just met up with NeuRS.
Oh yeah, right.
NeuRS as well. Let me just send a quick link to that. They are a
Is it NeuRS or is it NeuRS Lab?
It's NeuRS Lab, or do you want to?
Okay.
Yeah. So I met with a few people from there. There was excuse me, I forget their names. Alex.
And
Alex. Also, here's the group. This is what I'm talking about. I just met up with them yesterday. And they said they're looking to get people involved on remote projects related to neurotechnology and similar opportunities. So basically, they were also reconvening to kind of ask people, what do we want to do? We basically got a bunch of people from neuroscience, technology, software engineering, and different areas together to start this group in NeuRS Lab, all with similar goals or ideas of making neurotechnology more accessible, more easy to access across various people, not just in the United States, but across the world. And we want to ask ourselves, what are the best ways of doing these sorts of things, and how can we contribute to that? So basically, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's great.
It doesn't come up on Google yet.
Oh, I think it's a LinkedIn group.
No, I see that.
Not like all or anything.
Yeah. I hope to learn more about what the goals are.
So yeah, that's great. Having a good conversation about that. We should follow up on some of that as well. So
will that be part of? Will they be involved at all in the hackathon this next weekend? Next week? Or is it
That's
next
right.
weekend?
New reality? New reality?
Yeah.
Okay, so new reality is in 3 weeks from now. It's so
Okay.
yeah. Let me share about new reality. That's a cool one too. So this is New Reality Hackathon at Columbia from March 8th to March 11th. No, wait, did they change the dates? Wait, what the heck? Okay. That's a pre-hackathon workshop. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me. Yes, the hackathon is the hackathon itself will be March 8th to March 11th with pre-hackathon workshops through Zoom. I'm going to be there.
Mm.
There are going to be other people there too. So a few different ideas what they're going to be doing, like the OpenVCI keyboard, and a neuroscience game, Neuromancer.
That's funny. So I just checked Nervous Labs, or the one project that I saw there was EEG EXP or EXPI, which is the John Griffiths. John Griffiths runs it now. It was originally a Alexander Barachon project, but this is like do cognitive neuroscience experiments with consumer.
I worked under John at UFC.
Yeah.
Was my supervisor. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that was the one post from the LinkedIn group from Alex.
Yeah, absolutely cool. Yeah, so new reality is in early March, so that'll be there.
Yeah. Looks like Vrushali's joined us. Welcome. Yes. So I don't know. Maybe we can go around and do updates if people have specific updates they want to do. I'll give an update for what's been going on this week in the lab. So Monday, of course, we had DevaWorm, and we always have a good set of conversations there. On Wednesday, we had Cognition Futures, where we talked about the biology of cognition. And then Thursday, we continued with that conversation. This is the paper by Humberto Maturana, and it's pretty detailed. It's pretty foundational for cybernetics, and of course also some neuroscience modeling as well, because he was operating back in he wrote that paper in 1970, and then we didn't really see connectionism until the 80s, but it shares a lot of traits with that approach. So it's very early stuff where you're actually building these kind of connectionist models. I didn't call it that, of course, but.
Did you see the Wikipedia for cognitive biology?
No. Oh, well, I did. Yeah.
They have it as the I forget who wrote the 77 article, but it's somebody else, and it's like 1977.
Oh yeah.
And,
well,
and it's just like, and they talk about Maturana and Varela.
Right.
So it's just like they know those. like what about biology and cognition?
Well, I think they probably know them from like the reissued books and stuff. I don't know.
Maybe.
But, yes, and so then we during the summers usually, but sometimes during the fall, also we have the open source meeting, which is usually on Fridays. Well, we didn't have that this week. Instead, we had an organizational meeting on a paper submission that we're going to be making on world models and AGI. So we're getting that organized, and hopefully that I think we have a pretty good idea of what we want to do. We kind of pulled up the call and looked through it and see what they were kind of targeting. So yeah, I think we have the outline for that. So we'll be working on that more. We just need to have an abstract by March 1st, and I'll kind of pull together an abstract, and I'll pass it around before the deadline. So today we're at the 17th, so we have maybe a week and a half to get that done. So Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah. So, does anyone want to give any updates? Things that they've been doing this week? Things they're interested in talking about?
But following up on the saffron, kind of special issue.
Yeah.
I put some links in Brainbird vehicles that kind of related to world models and some of the other linked ideas in agent training.
Yeah.
Because so one, I think starting there with these were kind of like meetings, workshops, or subgroups meeting at ICLR or kind of related conferences, and the kind of dreaming as well as world models, using imagination. And if you see some of the talks there, they talk about these actor-critic models that allow you to project past the kind of the current pixel state. So it's these kind of extensions to get you longer term planning.
Yeah.
And that's what you see in some of these meetings, right? It's planning and reinforcement learning, right? Anyway, I haven't gotten to as far. This is if you check out the special issue link, which I think we have posted somewhere, but these are, I'm just following up on references that are in the do you have that?
Anyway, the call for the
yeah. So I haven't gone as far as but I did start getting into some of the saffron papers, and which are really great. They're so they're a lot. They remind me a lot of like 11 article, where they cover so much material so quickly that you could spend most of your time in the references.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But so saffron's definitely like really dense in terms of the ideas and references, but doesn't have as much it doesn't seem to be like producing software projects or toy examples of the sort. So the links that I was getting there were coming from particular people in like like Peter Abdil's group or something like that, where these are people who are also like teaching computational robotics courses and things like that. And it's some projects that might be relevant that I think Jesse had dropped some links to, like Mind Dojo. So Crafter seemed to be another one where it was like using Minecraft as an arena, but not using Minecraft directly because, as they said, Minecraft requires Java.
Oh.
I thought was a pretty hurtful criticism. His point was that, like, this is too slow if we want to test a bunch of stuff. Anyway, the there's I've got more links in terms of integrated global workspace theory, but I haven't got as far as Bengio's consciousness prior and G-Flow networks. and which does seem to catch you, or at least the G-Flow stuff does seem to catch you up with like current Bengio stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna try and stick on that this weekend, and anyway, see if we can get to the point of having something that would be great.
Yeah.
This week I met with one of the principals at Rutan, who's this is a brain what he would call a brain machine interface person.
Yeah.
So this is where they're doing they're focused on swallowing in this case, and so this is like giving people an implant if they've had stroke or they've undergone treatment for head or neck cancer and they've lost the ability to swallow. So there's the areas, the somatosensory cortex that you'd want to be able to motor cortex that you'd want to be able to reach are very superficial. So you can put flat grids on top of the cortex with kind of minimal surgery, right? It still requires opening. Sorry, still requires. That was really interesting talking to him about the issues of being that kind of company, in terms of every aspect of it, like one navigating the navigating the regulatory environment, which I've done as a medical device developer. But this is obviously a completely different level of risk where you actually do brain surgery, as well as thinking about payments, reimbursement, business model for it. Also, the really interesting issue of once you have a brain implant, that you need to continue monitoring that because the brain, the brain's changing in response to your prosthesis, and two, that you of course have some buildup in terms of the body's response to the material, So these are in terms of just monitoring chronic implants. That he's basically saying that he needs a subscription model because he needs to continue monitoring these devices. And we talked about the problems that other people have brought up in terms of vision prosthesis, and what happens with people. Yeah, when I said to him, I was like, well, what about the the vision prosthesis company that went bankrupt, and his sad response was, which one?
Oh no.
Yeah, I know that's not good, right? I think the one that we're talking about, or the one that we're most familiar with, is apparently this big French one. But anyway, the kind of capitalism that we're seeing currently is not what you potentially want for your brain implant. And real questions about how to plan for that, how to get funding for that, when there isn't necessarily the kind of regulatory framework for ensuring that.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. He was so we got to talk data analysis of these kinds of these sorts of data, and by that I just mean grids on the brain as opposed to non-invasive EEG. But anyway, it was really nice. He's also experienced with other implant companies like Precision Neuroscience, which is formed by a number of people who'd left Neuralink and formed their own company. So yeah, and so he wasn't able to share any backstories about things at Neuralink, but just again for Sarthak or anybody else, if you check, I'll drop things in virtual reality neurotech, but I got a lot more links than at NeuroTechX. NeuroTechX's Slack, and one in particular is I think a pretty even-handed article on Neuralink's current Neuralink technology in terms of what they have actually done. And what's actually of note in their current iteration. Yeah. So that was pretty good. And then the tissue talks. So this is for the more kind of brain organoid work. The tissue talk this week was what's his name? I'm forgetting his name now, but he was at Tufts. David Kaplan, and really interesting, especially from a psychiatry standpoint or neurodevelopment standpoint, because he was both focused on the gut and the brain, but in particular was the looking at the microbial impact on brain development, and so he's, again, you can see these links in the brain organoid channel, but so he's building an atlas of microbial impact, and that's super interesting. You could do the same thing for of viral impact too, and so I forget who posted something like that, but I had something, and I think it was bioevolution. Yeah, ancient viruses responsible for our big brains.
Okay.
But again, just that we're in this as he's pointing out, that we're in this environment that is filled with microbes and viruses, and it'd be silly to think that that our development is not impacted or perhaps even guided and having an expectation of this kind of environment.
Yeah.
So really interesting, really interesting work, and then the I think I mentioned the work on was it Fen Wang's work on touch that John Fox had interviewed her, and just talking about as it relates to cognition futures and the cybernetics reading group, just the sense of self, and using touch to get at the sense of self and other, and how it relates to the sensation of touch, as well as the interplay of pain in that.
Yeah, much of it comes through the processes of, say, like interoception as well. So not just physical touch, like what you touch with your fingers and your hands and your body externally, but the internal tactile sensations within the body. Yeah. Like a sense of self and the awareness of the self in many ways doesn't come so much from the brain. Actually, it doesn't come so much from mental activity. It comes from the body, from the somatic parts of the human. So the heart, the lung, the stomach. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And do you remember, Bradley, the name of the neurophenomenologist, the Active Inference Institute? Paul, I'm forgetting now.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh yeah, Julian Kiverstein.
Yeah. Okay.
Not Paul. Anyway, I thought it was very, very relevant discussion to the Cognition Futures meeting, and he also, like Hussain mentioned, he was also talking about touch and interoception, and as such brought up a number of people's work, including Adam Saffron, as well as Micah Allen, who's kind of more of a neuroimaging person doing interoception. But and Guillaume Dumas also had a talk this week too. Anyway, lots of great talks, lots of great links, and check the Slack.
Yeah. that's good.
Yeah.
So anyone else want to give an update?
So I don't think I really updated so much. I kind of introduced some stuff. Basically I'm trying to get pretty active on Twitch too. Gonna definitely start streaming my research, and you guys should follow me if you can.
Okay.
I'm not just trying to promote some gaming channel. I'm trying to create a community where we get people together, talk about research, tech, software, neuroscience, program science. I've been streaming myself, play around with EvoWorm, open web browser model. People stop by, they really do, even though Twitch is mostly used for gaming, but it's a great way to get the word out there. So yeah. Thanks, guys.
Great. Yeah. Good luck with that. Just kind of getting.
I've already given some of these updates before, but I can just share it again. I'm also getting started with the Manifold Research Computing Group.
Yeah.
So that's in addition to basically everything else I'm doing, like with Nerve Labs. And for those of you who maybe didn't catch, I've been working for the past several months at this startup, Alter Learning, where we make educational games to teach kids about STEM, about science and technology through the virtual world.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so all those are kind of initiatives that Hussain has been involved in. He's been, since his GSOC time in 2022, he's been exploring virtual reality, he's been exploring open source, and he's gotten into a number of things. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, thanks so much. Always happy to be here once again. So looking forward to GSOC this summer too. I wouldn't be doing it as a student, but if there are potential projects too, even if I were to just get on board, not with a stipend, but to even contribute to any way, then I'd be happy to do so too this summer. So thanks.
Yeah, well, we're doing, like I said, maybe some of the stuff you want to do with OpenWorm, we can do in the context of our group. We'll be starting up the open source meetings, weekly meetings. And usually it's like, we come in and we all kind of give a little bit of an update on what we're doing. Sometimes we debug some of what we're doing, present on it a little bit. And then I usually talk about a topic in open source. So it could be anything really. But I think that's a good community to have, because, working on open source projects sometimes can be pretty isolating if you're not, that's why open source projects have communities, because it's like you need to have that sort of crowdsourcing of, not just the crowdsourcing, technological crowdsourcing, but sort of the, show people what you're doing or discuss issues maybe that aren't completely technical. Just the sort of thing you would get in a regular organization where, you have to have like those water cooler talks to sort of get ideas in your head, or to, get some ideas clarified. And so one of the great missing pieces of remote work and of other types of more informal workflows. And so, yeah, we'll definitely be doing that this summer. So anything else? Any other updates then? Thank you, Hussain, for your update.
Can you hear me okay on this?
Can I what?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little funny because I'm trying to go through a different headset. Hi, folks. I'm Jesse. I do stuff with the Cognition Futures being lab manager. Excuse me. A number of things have already been covered, but just to touch upon some other things. Yeah, it's. I'm actually appreciative of being able to do a bit of a deeper dive into Maturana's biology of cognition. We have a really nice and interesting arc of, I guess, sort of investigation, really over the last year plus, of sort of this Francisco Varela lineage going through Varela into Depraz and some of the people working in his take on phenomenology and neurophenomenology and cardiophenomenology and so on. And it's kind of been this sort of, I think, it started almost with a critique of did cognitive science embrace some of his, I don't know, inactive-ish ideas. And we've gone in that direction. So now to kind of go back, way back to the 1970s and look at this text, which feels much more classically cybernetically oriented. It's been really interesting in my own sort of, I don't know, lens. I mean, for contextual people who are newer or stopping by, I think like I'm really considering. I'm a current master's student in data science, but I'm really considering if I want to do a PhD in somewhere in the realm of either one variation, which I don't think I'm going to do, but I recently looked at is like almost like science technology studies, or some kind of a philosophy history of science lean to whatever it is that I'm doing, because I seem particularly interested in these like trajectories of development of ideas, and it's been interesting for me to do that, both from having the space to do it, but then also like what do we do with this stuff, because I don't really just want to sit around and I'm not just interested in sort of. It's funny because I mentioned a while ago the book on like Hadot and like Hadot's this philosopher's worked on like interpreting old texts, very old texts, and one of the comments in and about his work was, after all the different schools of like philosophy that Athens kind of got dispersed, they, it was just them interpreting texts, and how once the communities changed, it was just interpreting these old texts. And I feel like I had a realization like, it's basically what we're kind of doing now. We can't really talk to Maturana unless someone makes, the Maturana bot, like the Levin bot. We can't really talk to Maturana or Varela the same way, but we're trying to sort of, remember or place in certain ways. And there's a certain, it's been a little bit trippy to kind of think about that space a bit, but to kind of couch some of that with other things. I would say I appreciate doing that because there's not really a lot of spaces to do that, especially with a group of people that care about it or are interested in the way that we are here. But I think it's I appreciate the effort people are having and the intention people are having to kind of do some new things with it too, like the embodied neurophenomenology stuff. Like I really appreciate. I mean, Amanda's could have said no updates, but it's been nice to put the document together for that. We're looking at things for the Embodied Intelligence Conference again. That's upcoming. We're looking at the world models paper that's upcoming. We're not really featured in here, but I'm doing some things regarding the history of the DSM, basically, and I think that's going to be a really nice background for me, and also for Jen, who's not off, she doesn't really come to these meetings, and maybe some other people, but kind of situating ourselves about the history of the DSM, and Avery's almost, or Morgan's very interested in computational psychiatry, and other people here too, as far as like modern, where are we going in the modern sense of that, and how can things happen. I did a very small project at the end of last year in a machine learning sense about a very early AQ10 related data sets and like some classification based off of that, but to see he put it together, I think it was like 2017, shortly after, in the wake of DSM-5, I believe, and so we're putting together a very simple AQ10 like data set about an autism related questionnaire, and so kind of just getting a little more familiarity in that space and where things are going with that has been quite interesting.
Yeah, which one? Do you know which questionnaire were you planning on using?
It was a data set based off of the AQ10. So
AQ10.
That was less.
Okay.
That was something that happened last year. So it's not planning on, but yeah. So
that's very cool.
The DSM project.
From a computational approach, we're actually going pretty deep with alter learning, as well as not so much questionnaire based approaches simply based off of someone's responses to questions like, how have you been feeling over the past couple of weeks? What is your ability to do and say these sorts of things? We're getting really close with pretty close with being able to collect the data itself based off of how the kids play the games themselves and use that in diagnostics straightforward. So
that's cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see. You kind of mentioned the group, and I know you said they're proprietary, but I'd be curious sort of to hear more about some of that explicitly sometime. But yeah, as far as the DSM project itself and its evolution, I think there will be some interesting. It's currently in a bit of a gathering context phase, but it's definitely an area that I think one of my larger future goals is essentially, related to, where can nuance be added to some of the models. I have had a really interesting opportunity to connect with someone who is doing genetics-based research on essentially their specific interest is in genetics and epigenetics, but like things that influence epigenetics or certain expressions, particularly in a developmental sense of things like developmental disabilities, like how does someone with a genetic predisposition towards XYZ have certain features in their developmental stages or like teen stages that affects some of their expressivity down the road. And I'm really curious to, I may have an opportunity to explore more of that with them, which will be very fun and interesting and exciting, and particularly because they have a similar interest in realizing that a lot of the models that we have for, diagnosis is a huge topic, and a messy one, and a lot goes into all for why it is. But that's there's only so much you can say about that right now. But I'm really curious to see from that like harder core biology genetic side, which I'm not familiar with. From that angle might be a really interesting thing to look at ahead. But right now, the DSM project, it's not really a set project, but we're basically going through the Mind Pictures book, which Morgan recommended. As a really nice history and background to some like psychiatry and sort of the biology of mental illnesses, so it's like the subtitle and what it's doing there to kind of get that side of things. And I guess I'll dovetail it by saying there's a few other things like there's a Danny Bassett paper about improving language, moving towards it for like enhancing transdiagnostic stuff, more developmental or time-oriented takes on things for related topics. And we've been looking at the Michael Levin paper on his work with forgetting the Xenobots guy, the Vermont guy, Josh Bongard, yeah. They wrote the paper about living things, which is every time I would love to ask Bongard Levin, like, are you implicitly drawing upon like Resident Evil 1 reference? Because all I hear is this funny soundbite from that very old video game, but it's really effective essentially against living things, and it's probably just me because that's how my mind works. But it's a really interesting paper because they're saying, hey, like here's ways that old terminology doesn't work or may not hold for like past machines versus where we're going in the future, about what's this explicit divide between intention and building and then capability, and what's generative and what are like agental materials and all that. So that whole space has been very interesting to me. And we're kind of, at least from my angle, like Cognition Futures is sort of doing its own thing, but there's a lot of these sort of projects on the side, and not on the side, but like that are in this sort of they're still crystallizing a bit, but there's a lot going on in this space. So it's sort of a nice coherent, one of the more coherent recaps of that stuff I think I've said, which is cool here. But there will be some things hopefully merging into maybe some Google Summer code related projects, and a lot of interest in, obviously a ton of interest in like VR stuff right now. We have a lot of interest in sort of brain human computer interaction type things right now. So I'd be curious to see what the lab cooks up, and as a through my lab manager hat, like we're very open to people finding opportunities, both things through Summer of Code, yes, but also like adjacent projects and trying to build sort of working groups to push out and focus on ideas. So we welcome those insights and questions, and hey, I'd like to work on this kind of comments. I look forward to that from the new people that I'll be stopping by in the next few weeks and so on. Yeah, that's my update for now.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. So a lot to think about there. Amanda said that she didn't have an update, no substantial updates, good meetings last week. Thank you, Amanda. And Vrushali had to leave, so she'll see us in the next meeting. Well, thank you for stopping by, Vrushali. So that's great. Oh, go ahead.
For those who don't know, Vrushali was also someone from previous School Summer Code and did some other things in sort of the VR space. So I think she's been trying to, excuse me, I think she's been trying to stop by recently. I don't know to continue on it. I don't know if she wanted to continue more on that, or she mentioned her Unity AR project also. So hopefully more from her too.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what happens sometimes with Google Summer of Code, is that you work on it very intensely for like a summer and then you put it aside. And sometimes people don't return to them. Sometimes they're interested in working on them more. So it's always a challenge to find time after you're getting paid for like a what's basically an internship to return to it. But that's okay, because we'd like to just kind of extend what she was doing last summer, as well as people proposing their own projects with it, like within that VR space. So we have one project on VR where we have some of the stuff that she's done already, and people can work on refining that. They can propose to do that, or they can propose their own project based on some of the points that were made in the project description. And so if you're interested in participating in our Summer of Code this year, we have a VR project, and we're still working on the open source sustainability project. And then we have another project through DevoWorm, which is also it should be on the INCF page if they've posted the projects. And that's on graph neural networks. So that's a little bit different. But if you're interested more in like machine learning, that would be a good one to go to. And then we have our meetings for DevoWorm where we kind of talk about that in more detail. Okay. So I think it's a good set of updates. I did want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that so yesterday we talked about this paper, so it's AGI world models. I don't have the call for papers up. And that's something that, it's just, we went through that call at yesterday's meeting and kind of discussed some of the references, some of the things. So I'm going to show my screen, and I'll show you some of the things that we have for that. So the first thing we have is this paper. I don't really want to show too much of it. It's pretty disorganized, but it's so we had this out. We started with this outline, and I've been working on the Evergood regulator stuff. And so we're going to start with talking about something called the Evergood regulator theorem. And we're going to kind of integrate that into a model of some of these issues in machine learning, and that's what we were talking about yesterday. So I've been kind of getting some of the things together for the Evergood regulator. So, there are things to discuss with respect to the history of cybernetics, some of the figures that we need, like this map of the good regulator. And so basically the idea is that the system operates on a domain, and the Evergood regulator tries to restrict its answer or its response to a subset of that domain. And so there are a bunch of issues that come up, but these are things that we want to kind of go through at the beginning. So it's actually a little bit more historical. There are a lot of citations from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and even the 40s in this section. And so, it's a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more process-oriented. And then, then we get into the idea of some of these ideas that we were talking about yesterday. So the second part would be getting into some of the issues in machine learning, some of these concepts that people are working on. And what I envision for this part, hopefully, is that we have some sort of linkage between Evergood or good regulation, maybe, and some of these issues. So people have worked on, we don't have to start from scratch. There are a lot of papers, of course, that we have. There's a huge literature, in fact, that could be relevant to this. But, want to stick to maybe some key examples. And then, some of these topics we talked about yesterday, kind of fill this in and link it back to the Evergood regulator theorem. And so that's kind of the plan I'm thinking of for the paper. We don't have infinite space, but we do have, I think, enough space to do that two-pronged approach. Kind of like giving a new kind of perspective on it. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, I think that people like it. We just have to we just have to know our stuff in terms of the machine learning literature. I mean, not enough so that we don't make embarrassing mistakes about interpreting it.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Bradley.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm curious about is do we have something that that charts a path? I mean, you can see, or what I'm seeing across the references that Saffron and others, I shouldn't keep saying it's just him, but sorry, is the kind of like improvements in efficiency, and you know, so it's like world models, you know, which is kind of the basis of the RFP, right? Is like a compressed policy, compressed spatial temporal policy, and you see like in the discussions that that I'm seeing around those papers, it's all about having to do less measurement, less simulation. You know, so it's like first it's like less measurement, and then second it's less even simulation, or you know, again, improvements in the information obtained every time you simulated something, and you know, and definitely some. Certainly, you see this a lot in Adam's own papers, is a focus on the developmental inductive biases and things like that. That again are kind of like all about improvements in efficiency and improvements in the performance. Yeah, just whether like how much of the cybernetic literature would contribute in that direction, or you know, like as well as yeah, would there be anything that you know, in any of these kind of arenas, so you know, Mind Dojo, Crafter, just being two examples where we think even if it's just a, you know, a subset, or you know, even if it's in a kind of a limited range, or you know, limited set of metrics, where we think that there would be, you know, an improvement, or perhaps, you know, some other benefit, like you know, I mean, I'm just making something up here, but like interpretability. I'm not sure anybody, you know, none of the papers that I looked at seem to care about interpretability. Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah. It, you know, this is the thing about the good regulator. Like, one of the things I hope we can do in the first part is to say the good regulator is this very specific thing. When you say good regulation, you know, oftentimes you just kind of, I mean, sometimes at least the, in the Conant and Ashby work, it's kind of like very vague with respect to the real world, you know. It's just like this simple model, and they say, well, you know, this is good regulation. You know, if something is if the regulator matches the system or something like that. And then, like, what does that mean in terms of I guess you could have interpretability in that model is like if the regulator is basically accountable to the data or the domain of the real world that matches, you know, then you know, but then, in a machine learning model, say, you have, sometimes you have hallucinations, sometimes you don't care about that mapping. And so it's just kind of like, if we get, we get a good loss, that's good performance. But maybe good loss isn't really the thing we need to, good loss is important, but good loss in the context of maybe good regulation, where there's a mapping to the real world or to the data set, but not so close that it can't generalize. Stuff like that. And I think there are a lot of issues that you could bring up just in that language, but there are more formalisms too. We can have that domain mapping. And I don't know if anyone's written anything on that. Other than like sort of some of the technical aspects of the models. If people have written explicitly about that kind of thing. But in any case, I think, I think this may be the paper that ends up doing that, at least giving people ideas about it.
Right.
Yeah, this is really, really interesting stuff. I think it's really, really cool. A lot of great work out there, not just from, say, like optimization of dynamic systems, but even taking from data science and machine learning approaches to understanding like how closely models can be interpreted and generalized. I'd like to see a lot more work in writing in those areas too.
Yeah.
By the way, Brunton's new course that he's currently rolling out is physics informs neural networks stuff.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah. That's on YouTube, or I guess.
Yeah. And as he says, like if your problem has physics, then this can definitely be a way in which you can see those kinds of the kind of improvements that we're talking about. Like you should be able to generate more efficient or more accurate model estimates or modeling. And sorry, and Saffron. The one thing I'll say about Saffron's papers is like he definitely covers a lot of cybernetic literature too. Like I don't know if he necessarily goes back historically as much, but covers. It just in some of the things I was thinking about in terms of that kind of physics-informed modeling, I saw, he had in these tables of kind of previous techniques, he had, like a projective geometry version, and that would have been, that's what I would have grabbed from, say, the geometric algebra physics informed modeling if again if you're in like a Minecraft environment or something like that, like exploiting the symmetries and invariances of the E3.
Almost like a paper title called "Making and Breaking Symmetries."
Oh, he had that.
Yeah,
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's the one he did with Levin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and good stuff there too.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll keep talking about that. But yeah, we do need a abstract by March 1st, so we'll get that together by then, and it should work. And so then the actual paper is due like June 1st with the attendant, all the seeming extensions that they give people. But hopefully it's of interest to them. And I still think it should be written if we don't get it in for some reason.
I think I think there's a good critical mass of people who will want to do that, which is great. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's been really interesting for me to see sort of through the meeting earlier this week and the talk, like things. It's been hard to tell, like, when will the snowball actually form and things stick to it and start to emerge. And it's cool to see that happening, and I appreciate Bradley holding it together for us to actually start commenting on. It's been kind of a difficult, and like the call is very big in nature, let's say. So I appreciate that, and look forward to keeping the snowball rolling, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, that's good. Yeah. Oh, Hussein, did you want to say something? Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out was that we're coming upon Embodied Intelligence Workshop. It's going to be coming up in March 21st or something like that. But we do need to get some abstracts in if people are interested in submitting. Then we can have, like, people can put their slides together or whatever. So I actually have submitted something for our stuff on developmental neurosimulation. So this is just basically on some of the latest work. This is, AKA developmental AI, basically. So this is kind of getting into some of the work. And I'm going to put some slides together on that. That's what I submitted this week on just to get something in. And then, it's like I think a 15 to 20 minute slideshow. So you don't have a lot of time, but it's always something. What I've done in the past is, like, do like a version for the workshop, which is very quick, and then, maybe unpack some of the slides for another version, put it on YouTube, in the YouTube channel. And so that can be useful because it allows you to relax it a little bit and pull out some of the, like I said, it's like last week I talked about unpacking writing. Sometimes you want to unpack a PowerPoint presentation because you put in a lot of stuff. You have to get through it very quickly. The point of it is to just kind of summarize things. But then there's so much there, that you could unpack. And you don't get to say everything. It's like a poster. There's a certain mode of the presentation you have to use. You have to put things in sort of an order, or, it's very visual. But there's a lot there that you can unpack. So, but again, I don't know if Jesse's thinking in terms of a submission.
I think for the AI conference, which is, you have a pretty decent amount of leeway there. I think it would be an opportunity to kind of continue with some of the embodied neurophenomenology stuff that was a thing last year. If I'm not, I'll see what Amanda wants to do about that. I know Amanda said she would not be able to, doesn't want to, like, spearhead something per se for that. So if we don't want to do anything for that, or like put it on hold for this one, we don't have to. If there's something to do, I may see about getting that submitted. Beyond that, there's some sort of the other thing on the radar for me, particularly for that, is I guess the easiest way to say it would be things related to the Levin's work on the living things and sort of the taxonomy and how we're talking about things, stuff that's come up a bit for me to be something that I'm doing some things in that space, so I may evolve an abstract into that. But those are the two main categories on my radar for that conference. I could do some general thing about cognition futures of the method project too, but I'm not sure I want to do that. But basically, the neurophenomenology, I guess even just phenomenology with a yes neurophenomenology bent that we've been talking about specifically the last kind of Borrellian arc that I've mentioned, or something related to I don't know Levin and terminology taxonomy stuff, and the two things that stand out for me. I don't know if anyone else has other really things they want to do for that event.
Yeah, I mean that if people are interested in submitting their own abstract, you just go to the Embodied Intelligence Workshop website, and we've talked about it in previous meetings, and then just you can submit it's just a talk. Usually they have these breakout sessions. And, yeah, we usually do something every year, and different people have done different things on their projects. So it's a good opportunity to, if you're doing something in embodied intelligence, they have a lot of things with robotics, with philosophy, just kind of a range of things. So yeah. Anyways, I look forward to we'll probably go over the conference this year after it's over, and yeah, be putting those slides together on that.
Yeah. We haven't discussed the HCI lab conference, have we?
I don't know.
This is for the biosensing technology.
Okay.
PhysioCHI. It was this one.
Oh, okay, that one. Oh, yeah, the PhysioCHI.
Yeah.
It did show up in the Slack, but we didn't talk about it actually. So.
Yep.
Yeah. I've got questions on best approaches to that, or like what works and what doesn't. Also coming from seeing so many attempts to use, again, like people trying to use physio signals as human computer interfaces, and yeah, and these are obviously all non-invasive,
right?
And the work that's starting to happen recently that is coming from invasive work in terms of mind reading or speech decoding, things like that. Still, yeah. So just I'm still not sure what the best directions are here, or what are the limited problems that we see would be kind of most aligned with the technology as it is.
Yeah, I think the physiological sensors and devices are probably like the thing you'd have to work on most to try to get to a good place with that.
Yeah. I mean, but I can also, I can describe, we're coming on the heels of Photonics West and biophotonics in particular. For instance, in terms of some kind of new devices like Open Health, or Open Water Health. These new ultrasound based equipment, or holographic imaging. What's this? The speckle coherent optical coherence. Again, like there's a number of really interesting kind of imaging physics, as well as it seems like some decent funding for what would be the not imaging, but you're not necessarily trying to do therapy with these, but you're putting energy into the system.
Yeah.
So stimulation, modulation. I'm not sure what term I'm trying to find here,
Yeah.
but I can say lots about the kind of, or if anything, I feel the most comfortable about the novel sensors and devices.
Yeah, I know.
the least sure about directions for them in the human computer interface direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just because again, like the kind of P300. A lot of these are slow relative to like, unless they're kind of like assistive technologies, these are typically slow and inaccurate measures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or again, that's my take, and but it's the area that I feel kind of like the most that I've got the best background for. Like,
right.
I should be able to say something. And yeah.
I think that's an interesting point about the timescales of these things. So like the signals that are very, we're dealing with signals that aren't really on the same scale as behavior. So if you have like a behavioral oscillation, how does that match with like a biosignal oscillation? If it's like something like muscle, it can be matched up, but if it's something like EEG signal, then maybe not. Or if you get a component of the EEG signal, maybe. Yeah. So, okay. Jess says, I have an assistive technology lab to follow up on. We'll see more in the future about that.
Yeah. And so it is, at least for following this kind of space or area, South by Southwest is coming up, and there's going to be, so like there's typically a neurotech, special interest group. I don't know what they call them at South by Southwest, but there'll be a neurotech group at South by Southwest, and one of those is from cognition, one of those from neurable. Yeah.
I should pay attention to that.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody goes to South by Southwest.
Is it going to be like by you, like located there? Or? I don't know where it's usually.
In Austin.
It's usually Austin, or I think it's always Austin. I used to go to North by Northwest.
Where's that?
That was important.
Oh, okay. Get followed by an airplane. Yeah.
I was up at Reed College, and then down at U of O. So I can remember that when it was but it was very different. South by Southwest has become a like a tech meeting, or it's got a big tech association now. And anyway, I just saw Adam Molnar and Andreas Forslund talking about meeting there, Jesse. So like they'll be definitely talking about assistive technologies, about using the signals, using Neurables headset or ear EEG to estimate focus and attention.
I'm seeing. I'm looking at their tracks now. I'm seeing the tech industry track. I'm seeing the psychedelics track. That's what's
that'll always that doesn't surprise me.
And the health and medtech track, which I definitely need to look at. So I'll put that on my radar. It'd be really cool if I could pretty sure. They don't really do virtual things for this, do they?
I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Well, thanks for mentioning that, because I forgot about.
When is it?
Looks like in a few weeks. Looks like April 8th.
8th to 16th.
March 8th through 12th. Excuse me.
Yeah. There's big SysStem is coming up. So stem cell stuff is overlaps with that. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for that. That's good stuff.
It'd be good to follow, and certainly Hussein's gonna have, certainly got more of his finger on the pulse of physio HCI, and a lot of it's caught up with the kind of VR XR stuff, building that into headsets, and you see that with some of the cognition stuff. That's cognition with an X. Yeah,
I feel kind of bad, because I feel like I know Hussain just left, but like I feel like there's something. I feel like it would be a really great time, and maybe we can do this over the summer. But I feel like I don't think we're gonna be. Oops, I just hit the wrong button here. Sorry. I don't think we have anything to put for the conference, like a 4-page paper on what. Like, there's nothing for us to do right now. But there's a lot of interest. I feel like collectively right now we have a pretty strong critical mass. Even I know people in and outside of the lab right now, but we have a lot of interest in this space, and I feel like there's something we could do there, but I don't really know what yet. So that's constantly on my mind. It's just I'm not sure what to how to materialize it yet.
Definitely, and I drop a lot of yeah. Amanda's just mentioning this this new manuscript from Michigan on psychedelics, or I think I haven't clicked through yet, but yeah, there's Anshuli, and Mashur, and by the way, I saw one of the more interesting global workspace theory papers I saw was Mashur's first author. I mean, I was kind of following up on good computational, good computational papers where people had really, had tackled a particular domain with one of these approaches with a computational implementation, and I hadn't seen this before, but now I think I understand, or I think I get a better sense of eruption as it relates to things like consciousness, and in particular like locked-in syndrome kind of stuff. So anyway, that was some good mature stuff. Anyway, I post a bunch of links on that relate to imaging and HCI and things like that, as in terms of meetings and things like that, just to see where we are in terms of is this something, as well as to check on these things next year too.
Always have some idea in the hopper so we can pull it out.
Well, just see where I think Bradley, did you post the fNIRS thing in the NeuroTech channel?
I may have. I don't remember. Let's see. I can find
it's like I mean, I could say a lot about who posted that? That was you.
Oh, that was you. The ultra wide angle
the list of publications.
This one,
so that's like a spin-off from Radboud. you know, a good, it's a good university spin-off fNIRS company. You know, like NearX probably has more people, but I mean, I can tell you like the other 6 vendors, and you know, as well as like what software packages that you probably want to use for processing that, and things like that. But I'm still not sure where that puts us, or you know, what our interest would be in terms of like utilizing that.
Yeah.
It's a good cheap way to get a signal that's a lot like fMRI. You know, from you know, potentially like a localized region, like you know, here or you know somewhere where there's not a lot of hair.
Right. Prefrontal cortex, yeah, basically.
You know, and this is like, you know, this is exactly where Brit and Chance, like back in the 80s focused, and you know, in some ways you could say like we're not doing that much different. It's like we got better spatial resolution. Yeah. With the kind of multiplexing and fiber stuff that we have now.
But it's not like fMRI where you get depth into the brain. And,
you know, you get depth by having more distance, right? So it's like the more distance you have between the emitter and the sensor, then the path that light went, right, will give you that depth. And you know, you need some different software to try and make sense of that, to you know, give you the spatial aspects of that. But again, you know, I can point you to the people who do that best. And
what's a signal resolution? It's not very good for like going whole range.
It's not very good, and as you go deeper, it gets worse, right? So you know, but MCX and well, MCX is one of the best packages for that. You start doing finite element modeling to do that kind of light modeling, but it's a very similar problem to the kind of EEG, right?
Right. So
you have a similar these kind of similar banana shapes of the light, you know, where it started being picked up, and it's tough to do. You know, you do have to deal with multiplexing and to you know, use multiple emitters and then be able to make sense of that. And you see the kind of the fanciest stuff is in the kernel headsets, right? So this is this company that had a big funder in Brian Johnson and made, you know, very, very, very arguably the most advanced NIRS headset, NIRS helmet, you know, so like whole brain, like whole head helmet, which is a really great, it's a really cool device to see, and but tightly controlled in terms of the data stream. So, but it's really nice tear downs of it with, you know, they have David Boaz, who's, you know, was the student of Brit and Chance's, and everybody else is a student of David Boaz. They have him actually doing the breakdown with Ryan Fields, the CEO. And it's a really interesting device how they tried to deal with the hair issues, and they had to deal with the multiplexing, et cetera. But anyway, it's just still not quite clear where we're, how it intersects with the lab interests in terms of what we want to do with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out a strategy for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we could. I mean, we'd have to get the equipment, but it would be something maybe to integrate with VR. But of course, that's tough to get all that working together, all that hardware.
Yeah. I mean, but again, I still, so it's like, well, you can integrate it with VR, and if you're, but at that point, it's like, are you? That's just. I just think of it as a simple cogneuro environment, or like to me, that's just a device to do cognitive neuroscience experiments.
Yeah. A naturalistic
where
type.
Instead of having to measure, the distance from the having like a chin rest and then a measure to distance to the screen for the subjects.
Right.
It's
right there.
It's dealt with simpler because the person's eyes are right there. Sorry, my dog's scratching away here.
It's okay. So we have someone who just joined us, Sarrah Bastawala. So welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself? You can do that in the chat if you'd like, or you can go on camera. I assume you're here for GSOC, in which case, welcome. If not welcome, that's fine. So yeah, welcome to the meeting. Okay. So I wanted to switch gears. I had a request from Jesse in yesterday's meeting, and he wanted to go over one of the papers in the call for participation for that paper we were talking about. And so I'm going to do that now, and it's actually one of the papers. So let's see. Actually, there are two papers here I'll go over. One is from the call and one is not. So you can see my screen. So this is a paper that they had in the call for involvement for the special issue. And this is a collection of definitions of intelligence. And so we've done papers like this before where people kind of give different, or they review different definitions of things. And it's very interesting to see how people approach this because, there's, of course, the definitions of intelligence that we're all used to. And then if you ask someone, what is intelligent behavior, people give you like a lot of different answers. So I don't know if it's the point is there's not one answer that is, in existence, but also there's not one answer that people give because oftentimes they'll just make up like a very utilitarian answer. So that's why these kind of papers are important. So yeah, this is, it could be natural intelligence, it could be artificial intelligence. So I think we're kind of getting, we're spanning that gamut. But I think it's important to make that distinction too, because, otherwise we're stuck saying like, well, AI is just like human intelligence. And of course, if they're total or biological intelligence, and if they're very different things, at least from our first principles, then, we don't know exactly where we're going and how we've achieved any sort of thing that resembles biological intelligence. So this paper is a large survey of informal definitions of intelligence that the authors have collected over the years. So this is where it's impossible to list as many definitions of intelligence that are buried deep inside articles and books. So you could do like a more extensive literature review, but it's kind of hard to find those definitions in articles because if the paper is not about that, it's hard to actually find the paper because sometimes it'll just be like in a footnote or something. This is probably the largest and most well-referenced collection there is. So they have collective definitions, what they call psychologist definitions, which would be like human intelligence. I mean, it's biological intelligence, but just kind of limited to humans. AI researcher definitions, which of course is artificial intelligence. And then is a signal definition possible? What's missing here, of course, is like all the other biological intelligence. So I mean, this is something that is clearly limited, but it does give us some idea of the diversity that exists. So, viewed narrowly, there seems to be almost as many definitions of intelligence as there are experts asked to define it. So again, so they basically made this collection of definitions. Although there is no single standard definition, if one surveys the many definitions that have been proposed, strong similarities between many of the definitions quickly become obvious. In many cases, different definitions, suitably interpreted, actually say the same thing but in different words. So what they say is, if you look at these, 70 different definitions, you can come to a conclusion that there's some sort of universal definition of intelligence, or what they call universal intelligence, which has strong connections to the theory of optimal learning agents. So they use these two references to sort of get at that. And so rather than exploring very general formal definitions, here we will instead take the opportunity to present the many informal definitions that we have collected. So they're not going to explore these two things that they cited. They're just going to talk about this list. So the first are collective definitions. So this is things that have been proposed by groups or organizations. You might have consortia or something. They have dictionaries that they use for this. So the ability to use memory, knowledge, experience, understanding, reasoning, imagination, and judgment in order to solve problems and adapt to new situations. So this is a World's Dictionary. Basically, it's solve problems and adapt to new situations. Then the next, this is another dictionary definition, the capacity to acquire and apply knowledge. So acquire information and apply that knowledge. And then capacity is also important. As we know, capacity is something that we talk about a lot in information processing, in cognition, but of course, intelligence would also have that as well. Individuals differ from one another in their ability to understand complex ideas, to adapt effectively to their environment, to learn from experience, to engage in various forms of reasoning, and overcome obstacles by taking thought. And that's from the American Psychological Association. So this is a professional organization now, not just a dictionary. They're kind of focusing in on what psychology cares about, which is understanding complex ideas, adapting to the environment, learning from experience, engage in reasoning, overcome obstacles, basically the kinds of problem solving that you would find in a psychology experiment. So we're getting like a lot of different words in here. There are some common themes, as you can see. A lot of this revolves around like reasoning, planning, solving problems, acquiring information, processing information. Those are your basic things. And so these are just from these are mostly encyclopedia definitions. Unfortunately, encyclopedia definitions or dictionary definitions can be, not really complete, not really what we might think of as rigorous. It's just kind of a informal definition. But it is instructive because it's like if you were to boil down what is intelligence or what is, learning and memory, you would get like this boiled down version that's, going to have a lot of the main idea features. So, they have Wikipedia. Intelligence is a property of mind. So they have a mind that encompasses many related mental abilities, such as the capacities to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend ideas, and language, and learn. So they include all these different aspects. So that's the collective definitions. It's just basically, you might think of this as mostly sort of the colloquial definitions. There's some from like the American Psychological Association. But now we get into psychologist definitions. So this is like people with specific research imperatives, and they have like their own definition that sort of matches the problems they're trying to address. So, if you have people who focus on a certain type, like developmental psychology or cognitive psychology, they're going to focus on that. So, Anastasi, I don't know who that is, but their definition is intelligence is not of a single unitary ability. So it's not one thing, but rather a composite of several functions. The term denotes a combination of abilities required for survival and advancement within a particular culture. So they've put in the words culture. They say it's not a single unitary ability. So up here, in the collective definitions, you might come to think that it's a single ability that does a lot of things. In this case, what this person's saying is it's not a single unitary ability, but it's a composite of several functions, and then it allows you to survive and advance within a culture. So it has culture, but these other collective definitions didn't even talk about that. It's basically the environment you're embedded in. Okay, so then, Benet, who is one of the people who were involved in some of the standardized tests, their definition is, it seems to us that in intelligence, there is a fundamental faculty, the alteration or lack of which is of the utmost importance for practical life. This faculty is judgment, otherwise called good sense, practical sense, initiative of the faculty of adapting oneself to circumstances. So aside from this being very 19th century in the rhetoric, it kind of gets like some things like judgment, good sense, practical sense, whatever those mean, and then adapting one's self to circumstances. So again, it's adaptation to like a cultural world or a social world. So this, and then there are some more general definitions. I'm trying to find a good one here. So this one here is J. Drever. In its lowest terms, intelligence is present where the individual animal or human being is aware, however dimly, of the relevance of its behavior to an objective. So this is like this goal-oriented aspect, and it covers animals as well as human beings in this term, which is not really necessarily a distinction, but in psychology it is. So we'll do this. But the idea is that there's some sort of agency. Many definitions of what is indefinable have been attempted by psychologists, of which the least satisfactory are 1, the capacity to meet novel situations, so it's novelty, or to learn to do so by new adaptive responses. So basically, when you get information that you've never seen before, and this is something that in AI is a big issue with, out of distribution data and with things where the AI is not trained, it's not in the training set. So this is where, novel situations can be a challenge to intelligence. And 2, the ability to perform tests or tasks involving the grasping of relationships. So like understanding them. We talked about grasping in some of the cognition future stuff. The degree of intelligence being proportional to the complexity. So if you have a complex environment, your intelligence is also complex. Or the abstractness, or both of the relationship. So abstract things are important. If you don't have intelligence, you can't understand abstract things, not in the real world, not rooted there. So like things like higher order geometry or something like that. So that's what they're getting at here. And then, there's some things about sensory capacity in one definition, sort of a perceptual based definition. Walter Freeman has a definition: adjustment or adaptation of the individual to his total environment or limited aspects thereof, the capacity to recognize one's behavior patterns so as to act more effectively and more appropriately in novel situations, the ability to learn, the extent to which a person is educable, the ability to carry on abstract thinking, and so on and so forth. Now, these ideas about intelligence have a caveat, which is that there's a pretty bad history of like people being, ranked in terms of intelligence, and and sometimes it's it wasn't necessarily based in reality. It was just preconceived notions of what what if people could say read a great novel or something like that. So there are a lot of caveats to some of these definitions as well, like ethical caveats and culture-bound caveats. So you were going to say something, Jesse. I noticed there was some activity in the chat.
I think I'm going to wait, and then if we have time and people want to do it, I'll put on my like polemic card in the paint cat and just say outlandish things that critique a lot of stuff. But it's not. It's more entertainment. I guess not important to do. I appreciate going with this paper, though. I really do.
Yeah. So yeah, let me come back to so I have some things in the chat. I'll come back to those. I'll go back to the paper and finish up because there's one more part to this. So yeah, then there are the AI researcher definitions. So we've talked about the psychologist definitions, the collective definitions. This is AI researcher. So this is an AI, a large way like thinking about AI as like this artificial system that's going to do things that are intelligent. So again, in the caveat here is that we understand what maybe biological intelligence is, and AI is really a way to sort of recapitulate that. But a lot of times we misidentify or misinterpret what we're seeing in a machine and think it's like this human level intelligence, or it's as they said about early artificial life, it looks and smells like life, which is sort of an intuitive thing, not really rigorous definition. So that could be a problem with a lot of this. So yeah, let's go. Daniel Fogel said, any system that generates adaptive behavior to meet goals in a range of environments can be said to be intelligent. So that's, again, sort of consistent with their other definitions. Ben Gertzel. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, do we need achieving complex goals in complex environments?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is like.
I mean, is that contributing?
Yeah, that's Ben Gertzel. Yeah. So
yeah. I noticed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, some of these are like that's a definition, but like, what about it? Like, what does it do with that?
Yeah. Are we also listing wrong answers?
Yeah. So I mean, the basis here would be like maze solving, maybe, where an agent can go into a maze and find the exit, but then an agent could do an exhaustive search of the space and do that. It doesn't mean it's intelligent. It just means it can do things.
Did they list Levin's favorite William James quote?
I don't think so. I don't see it in here.
Oh, how can they do all that? They don't even have the. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I haven't gotten to it yet.
I forget when Levin started adding that to his papers, because it's like I think at the beginning, or it's certainly almost all his like YouTube interviews. He starts with William James, or last couple of years he started with William James quote.
What about like multiple ways of pursuing something or whatever?
Yeah. Solving the same problem in different ways.
Yeah.
I think that's his.
Well, they didn't have it in the psychologist's definition.
Well,
you don't have William James.
He's definitely intelligent, because I can hit that little circle button and it'll automatically just do it.
Yeah.
So, I'll save my comments until at the end. Thank you.
Well, okay. So Ray Kurzweil, of course, is the singularity guy, and he says intelligence is the ability to use optimally limited resources, including time, to achieve goals. Okay, that's sort of an optimization argument. Doug Lanatt and Feigenbaum, intelligence is the power to rapidly find an adequate solution into what appears a priori to observers to be an immense search space. So in this case, it's again optimizing a search space, finding, and this is what a lot of artificial intelligence researchers are really using intelligence for, is they're trying to minimize the cost or minimize the energy, or trying to find some do search types of search functions, basically solve search functions optimally. So this is important to remember because that's why you have intelligence. And again, like a definition like this makes sense in light of like what the goal, what the sort of need, why are you interested in studying intelligence? So yeah, again, Legg and Huttner, who are the authors of this, intelligence measures an agent's ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. This again it doesn't have the word adaptive in it, which is interesting because if you were doing a lot of research in genetic algorithms, you might say adaptive. But if you're doing research in like, I don't know, like rule-based systems or machine learning, you might not think of adaptive. You might think of optimization as the imperative. So that's an interesting difference. McCarthy, who's an early AI researcher, John McCarthy, intelligence is the computational part of the ability to achieve goals in the world. Varying kinds of degrees of intelligence occur in people, many animals, and some machines, which again is, I don't know if computational part is like, I don't know, it's an interesting definition, because it implies that there's a computational aspect to it, and that's what's done to achieve goals in the world. And then this varying kinds of degrees of intelligence occur in people, many animals, and some machines. Okay, now we're getting into like where you can find intelligence, but I think the computational part is interesting because none of the psychological definitions mention that, but you would expect it from someone doing AI research. Newell and Simon, in any real situation, behavior appropriate to the ends of the system and adaptive to the demands of the environment can occur within some limits of speed and complexity. So again, it's this idea of situational behavior, maybe adapting. They say adaptive here, and then there's this optimization argument within some limits of speed and complexity. So that's intelligence means getting better over time, which is not, I don't know if that's a good definition. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these so is a single definition possible? Well, I mean, to me it seems more like about sort of why you're studying intelligence than if you're trying to converge upon a single set of mechanisms. But that's just that's something we have to think about. So yeah, that's a good at least a good attempt at this, to kind of think about, to frame this at least in a way that's comparative.
And sorry, what was the second paper you were gonna?
Oh, well, why don't I go? I'll go through Jesse's comments here. I'll get to that, and then
Sure.
yeah.
I assume the separate paper is separate, like different topic.
It's related, but yeah.
Because I'll say a lot, but I don't want to interrupt things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jesse says, I almost feel like words like intelligence and consciousness might be better related to themselves or to other things, maybe even domains or types of interactions. Yeah, I think consciousness is a whole nother can of worms. And it's not necessarily linked to intelligence, but whatever. Rather than trying to say something discreetly about what the term is. Maybe I'm being functionalist about definitions. Leads me back a bit towards the Enlightenment era split about a value ways to thinking about potential limits, and then thinking about
those just to say those two comments weren't necessarily
connected.
See, like there were different time points, so there wasn't the previous comment wasn't an add-on to the first comment. Just
yeah.
Yeah.
And then Levin's machine definition paper, if we go back to that and think about this paper, and then the principle of intelligence,
What I mean by principle of intelligence is a bit like free energy principle, and like it's I think I in some ways it felt like what the paper was getting at was almost like, here is a principle that isn't really about proving or trying to define. It's just, does it kind of fit this thing or not? Which is like, okay. But yeah, any other comments before I say a few things, I guess?
Well, I did want to point out that Sarrah introduced themselves. Hello.
Yeah, Sarrah.
Hello. Yes, you assume right. Thanks for the welcome. Meaning I was asking about GSOC. I am a final year undergraduate from VJTI in India and interested in the lab's work in GSOC. Hope to gather a bit more of what is done here. Apologies for being late to the meeting. People drop in all the time. Don't worry about it. But yeah, this meeting is kind of a broad sample. We'll be having more in-depth open source meetings kind of closer to the summer. And hopefully, yeah, if you have any questions about GSOC, please let me know. Or, Jesse even can answer some of those questions. Yeah.
Saturday meetings are basically it's almost like town hall. Like you just kind of come up and share things that you're doing. It's not a representative. It compared to other lab meetings, it might be much more off topic.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just how we operate too, because we're not driven by like we don't have we're not beholden to accomplish certain things in certain ways. So it gives us a lot of freedom. We have much more structured meetings outside of Saturday, but Saturday is a bit more like almost like congressional representatives are going to come into town to talk about stuff. Kind of a deal. So because I almost thought there was someone else coming in before. I was going to ask about some of the stuff I forget, someone invited here a few weeks ago. I think I might try to start introducing it that way, as opposed to saying, this is our lab meeting, and this lab meeting is about what we're doing, because it's not necessarily, although it is, but it's sort of, for an outsider, they won't be able to tell very well. Anyway, welcome.
Yeah.
For anyone's stopping by.
Yeah. I'd like to go through
Thank you. Yeah, I got that. It's kind of like, yeah, I understood that it's kind of like a bit more about just sharing what you all do, I guess, like seeing the paper as well. So I really like that. One question I did have was, like you said, there were other more structured meetings outside of Saturday. So are those scheduled, or are those like just they get posted on the Slack or something?
We usually have a schedule of meetings, which we usually are. I can post a listing of meetings for people interested. They're usually more topical though. So yeah.
Yeah, sure, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
That's definitely something we can do. A lot of them tend to be not all of them. Some of them are later, in like American Eastern Time.
Yeah.
But I should make it. Actually, this is a good point, because I kept meaning to bring this up. It might be nice to just make like I can use JoePro for this, but I base like an orthogonal calendar that you can just subscribe to see things and manage it generally. And I've done that in different ways, but now that we have a lot more sub meetings. So we have like Cognition Futures, the Cybernetics Reading Group, occasional Friday meetings, and those seasonally the open source or Google Summer Code related meetings too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and we also have a lot of them are recorded, so we have a playlist for some of the meetings, like Cognition Futures. So we can have that on. People can review those on our. And DivaWorm is a separate YouTube channel, but we can point people to that, and then
DivaWorm meetings on Monday. But it would be good. That's something that's a kind of obvious thing that we should have, and as the best way to do it is there. But yeah, that's a very valid question. So yes, we'll send that. And if you're in the Slack, that would be the easiest way to see it soon. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Please go.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd like to get to this other paper for like 10 minutes, and then Jesse can have the floor. So that should finish.
That's fine. Meeting. I don't want to blow up anything.
Oh no, that's fine. But I just want to go over this paper, because this second paper is something relevant to what we talked about in the past few weeks. And this is the Justin Wood paper or one of the Justin Wood papers. We talked about Justin Wood before. He's from Indiana University, Department of Bioinformatics. And he's doing this stuff on are vision transformers more data hungry than newborn visual systems? So we've been talking about like, developmental AI and how like, we can look at like, or maybe we can look at like human development or animal development. We can compare it to what, people like to compare development and learning. And so last week we talked about people acquiring data using GoPro cameras and analyzing the data using machine learning and finding features. So there's this link, and I wouldn't say that like people are doing true developmental AI here. They're using AI to learn, and then they're mapping that to something in human development. So, but it's interesting because they're asking the question, they're looking at a specific type of machine learning model, vision transformers, and they're asking, do you need more data than a newborn visual system? And of course, we talked about the newborn visual systems, that they can do a lot of generalization from very limited data. And not only is the data very limited, but that newborns tend to explore objects, particular objects in their environment in great detail. So they don't get a lot of generalization of the environment. They get a lot of generalization maybe of specific objects because they explore them deeply. But it's, it's a different type of data. So let's get into the paper here. The abstract reads, vision transformers are top-performing models of many computer vision benchmarks and can accurately predict human behavior on object recognition tasks. However, researchers question the value of using VITs as models of biological learning, so this is where we're separating out biological learning from artificial learning, because VITs are thought to be more data-hungry than brains. And so this is just like, how do I learn something? How much data do I need to learn something? Versus an artificial model where it needs a lot of data. We know that artificial models are generally pretty, what we call data hungry, meaning they need large training sets to generalize. Whereas, when we learn something, we don't necessarily need a lot to generalize things. Some of that is because we've acquired things in development. And if we're an infant, we haven't acquired much, but, we have like maybe different types of innates that are priors. And so we can use those, or, we have a lot of capacity to learn from very limited data. So something's different in biological learning. So VITs are thought to be more data hungry than brains, with VITs requiring more training data to reach similar levels of performance. To test this assumption, now this is an assumption, we don't know for sure, we just kind of assume this. We directly compared the learning abilities of VITs in animals by performing parallel controlled learning experiments on VITs in newborn chicks. So they're actually using a chick model, and chicks are very interesting in development, both from like the embryonic aspect and from like the learning aspect in hatched chicks. So, chicks have this thing called imprinting, where they like see something that looks like a parent in the imprint, and they learn behavior from the parent, and among other things that they do that are very interesting. So this is a good model to use for this this comparison. We first raised chicks in impoverished visual environments containing a single object. So they have this, basically this sparse environment, just a single object, and the chick is going to learn something about that object. Then simulated the training data available in those environments by building virtual animal chambers in a video game engine. So this is where they're using a virtual environment to simulate the training data. We recorded the first-person images acquired by agents moving through the virtual chambers. So they're using this sort of first-person video approach where they're getting information from the chick, and then use those images to train self-supervised VITs, or vision transformers, that leverage time as a teaching signal, akin to biological visual systems. So the teaching signal is time. When VITs were trained through the eyes of newborn chicks, which means that they're trained on this first-person video, or the first organism video. The VIT solved the same view invariant object recognition tasks. So this is where they have to recognize an object from various viewpoints. So basically they have a view of it from the training data, from the first person perspective, but then you should be able to recognize the object from different viewpoints. So it shouldn't matter what the viewpoint is when the object is shown to the vision transformer. It should be able to generalize from the training data. So VIT solved the same view invariant object recognition tasks as the chicks. So it actually learned from this unique perspective the same thing that chicks are learning in development. Thus, VITs were not more data hungry than newborn visual systems. So actually, what they're arguing here is it isn't about the training data. It's about the viewpoint. It's about the first person sort of. It's almost like an embodied argument. So, if I am taking a first person view of a scene, that's embodied because I'm in my body and my body is sort of determining how I see the world. And so that's a form of embodiment, but it's also sort of, that view is, in that way of learning things is sort of the key here. So what they're saying is that this sort of developmental viewpoint, I guess you could say, this developmental first organism viewpoint is really the key to acquiring data. And you don't necessarily need huge amounts of data. You just need the right viewpoint and the right sort of perspective on things. The flexible and generic attention-based learning mechanism in vision transformers, combined with the embodied data streams available to newborn animals, appears sufficient to drive the development of animal-like object recognition. So this is where they go into the results here. This is an image of what they did. So number one, they performed controlled rearing studies on newborn chicks. They trained these newly hatched chicks on a number of objects. In the training phase and the test phase, they had a highly controlled environment where they showed them single objects. Then they simulated visual experiences of chicks in virtual animal chambers. So this is where they trained. So they basically took this object. The chicks were looking at these objects. They were exploring them. Then they took those objects and they modeled them in a virtual world. So they had different, I guess they actually did present this at different orientations to the machine learning algorithm, but it's based on this viewpoint. So it's like the chick sees the thing, they explore it, and then they kind of take variations on it. They do some sort of data augmentation strategy, and then they plug this into the vision transformer where they train the model. And this is self-supervised learning. This is contrastive learning. And then they test the recognition across novel views, and they get this linear classifier, which is successful and is operating on the level of a newborn chick. And so that's what they've done here. And there's more technical detail here I won't get into, but basically this is their approach. And so they're able to take this type of acquisition and from that build a model of learning that can be implemented in a vision transformer.
I think we've talked about this couple's work before.
Yeah.
Maybe years ago. Does that sound right?
I think in the last year, maybe.
Is it really that recent?
Yeah.
But I remember their virtual chambers.
Yeah.
Or their or like
So yeah, it's really interesting.
Great stuff.
Yeah, really interesting work. So we have this GoPro camera data set from infants.
The NYU group.
Yeah, this is newborn chicks, and this is a group at Indiana, so NYU, Indiana. Then of course, Linda Smith is also in Indiana. Who's done stuff with GoPro cameras and infants. So you can see this path from infant learning informing machine learning, and so it's interesting work. All right, any other comments on that before I turn the floor over to Jesse?
I had to step away a little bit for some of the last papers. I missed a bit the end of it.
Okay.
But thank you for that too.
And I did drop a link into the William James definition in cognition features.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I like the fact that Google took that directly from a Richard Watson Michael Levin paper.
Oh, okay.
Was like, where did we find this definition? We found it in a Levin paper.
Levin is writing the new. I think gospel's too strong, but the New Testament of other two things. Thankfully, perhaps. At any rate, I guess. Let's see. What time is it? I want to gauge my responses.
Yeah, about 10 minutes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I want to put on my like outrageous hat and then my civilized hat. Also, before I do that, I will say I'm about to post the meeting schedule in the general thing, which will include Devo Worm, Condition Futures, Cybernetics Reading Group, sort of Friday auxiliary meetings / office hours / open source, some of the code stuff, and then our Saturday morning meetings. There's a few unscheduled or like itinerant or vagabond meetings, like for the DSM project, but that's kind of what's there. So I'll post that shortly. I have it. I'm just drafting it too. That said, I'll put my civilized hat on in the very neuromatch sense. I'm going to start with my civilized hat, and then I'm going to quickly take it off and put on my outrageous hat. Civilized hat says basically the comments I wrote there, like. I feel like the intelligence talk, this is mostly about the intelligence talk paper, but I feel like as someone who's really been seriously looking at specifically definitions and evolutions of terms and paradigms and stuff for the last several months or several years, I don't know how I want to say that, but I feel like I feel like a certain, in a well-meaning way, like, oh, like there's this is like, I understand why it's so messy. This is clearly not well done.
Yeah,
like there's something very off here, and to try to be fair and in my civilized hat, I'm sure all the definitions that were being pulled weren't. It's not the same as if you're talking to somebody and saying, "Hello, sir, madam, or whoever you are. Please tell me how you feel about intelligence," and feeding them qualifiers about like, are you talking in a general sense? Are you talking relative to your domain of study, specifically about psychology or AI or machine? Like I have sympathy for the lack of fidelity in the conversation, and I mentioned this a bit earlier when I talked about like the Hadot stuff and like we're kind of doing these sort of I can't use the word, but like exegestal, where you're just interpreting meaning from the text. You're trying to take the meaning from a text.
Exegesis.
And I like, yeah, Jesus stuff.
Yeah, I don't
Jesus
know. Yeah,
stuff.
I don't know if that's quite the pronunciation, but whatever.
Yes. So I have a lot of sympathy for like, there's an inherent lack of fidelity in that, and so sympathetically, in my hashtag sympathetic view, which I'm trying to build out, like there's an extra reason why like it just seems so bad. You're really meshing a lot of context together, and that's the point of the paper. And like, okay, that said, on the other hand, I feel like, oh, like, it's kind of inspiring to see this paper, because for me, it's like, okay, there's work in this space that I know I want to do. I have things to say about it. Like, I would really like to do a paper on something like this in the future, but much more tailored towards my own civilized aims. So that's kind of where I'm going to take the hat off. Maybe just saying like, it's I think it's a great example of how much there hasn't really been this is low hanging fruit to kind of pick on, but like when you're talking about it, like Bradley said it, he said it nicely enough, well enough, maybe succinctly more than I am here, which is like that, some of it's not, ethically, yes, it's dubious, but also like actually trying to get at the heart of the matter when you're talking about intelligence as if it's sort of a quality that a person may or may not possess, or how much, like trying to amount how much a human being has more or less intelligence, a machine is more or less intelligence, like that feels like a very particular discussion relative to what kind or what is, like those all feel like vastly different things that have important things to sort out. The fact that you're using the same word in all those situations is almost like arbitrary. Like why? Like don't even don't. That's kind of what I was getting at my first written comment is like these terms are not like this. The word is so like it feels like bad practice to use a word. like why are you using a word and trying to mesh this as a word, or like a term, and like so there's a lot of like things to say there. Okay, and that's my civilized hat, and very briefly I'll put on my outlandish hat saying, wow, like outlandish hat. Jesse says, my goodness, like what are we doing? Like why are people? Why? No wonder like our models for people or like talking about things are so like misguided. Like we don't know how to talk about this thing, and there's been so much weight, particularly in my sort of person studies or like how we talk about like the human being stuff and the DSM stuff. There's a place for like just sort of the massive declaration of inadequacy of like what these are, well-meaning people trying to say things, but it's like to what end is this happening? And then like why? I don't know. Like there's a certain like unfathomableness of it. And again, this is particularly the outrageous hat. I have a lot of sympathy. These are taken out of context of this samples, and it's not having a conversation with me. I think it'd have a much different thing if you put all these people in the same room, or even make kind of a generic chat bot that represents everybody and say, hey, what do you think in this qualified sense? But there's, I guess the last thing I'll say in my sort of outlandish head is a bit of like, no wonder there's, I'll probably just leave it at that for now. There's more I could say, but I don't really want to go there.
Well, I think your point is that there's a lot of intellectual baggage that goes along with intelligence, like people thinking of like sort of the way first of all the way humanity is. Some people, for example, during colonialism would think that Europeans were at the top of the heap, and so they build these intelligence models that were basically racist. You had a lot of baggage with respect to mental illness and people's intelligence, and ranking people as idiots or as like imbeciles or whatever, things like that. And then you have the whole thing about like the evolutionary perspective, like you notice that the definitions didn't really put humans in the continuum of animals. We're kind of like this separate thing. And so as a result, there's no real discussion of intelligent or animal intelligence or, the diversity of animal intelligence. And so it's very hard to make a definition of intelligence when you say, okay, there's human intelligence and there's machine intelligence, and machine intelligence is maybe going to be like human intelligence. But machine intelligence is fundamentally about optimization and not maybe what human intelligence is about or animal intelligence. So it's like there are all these different imperatives that are kind of butting up against one another, and no one's really taken the time to say, okay, let's clean the slate. Let's get a better definition of what we're actually talking about and make sure that it doesn't have all this baggage with it.
You were saying something, Morgan?
Well, I was just gonna add the. I mean, what Bradley was just saying in terms of how this has been misused, but also how it is used, or there was a nice talk yesterday at the Foundation's Data Science for like biomedical applications, talking about LLMs and somewhat about intelligence, but getting at its roots in terms of factor analysis of basically education in the like turn of the last century, right? And yeah, like what its goal, the ideal of a standardized education, not being like absolutely has limitations, but also what it was trying to do in terms of give everybody the best education, and trying to trying to maximize something, and then finding out like, oh wait, so like we know what they did do, but it is so I just wanted to kind of pitch Francois Chalet's paper on arc, because I think he gets, he takes a different approach in that he's just like let's stop training AI on games, and even things like chess and stuff like that. I haven't seen this paper, but this chess computer that's not based on search, I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
But like these are things that have superhuman performance because their computers are doing them.
Yeah.
Right? and so his arc is like trying to define tasks that are hard,
right.
as his approach, or to help flesh out these definitions. Like, I'm not sure what it is, but let's anyway, I of the references that Saffron listed, I think his is the most original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one that he listed out in the reference. Okay.
Yeah. It's like 15 or something like that.
I think things like that, and obviously we mentioned Levin's paper about changing terminology for stuff, and like, but I think there's a lot to do in that space. I think even I was going to mention something else too. Levin is making like an analogy bot to translate like a concept or an idea in one field to another. Like I think that's an interesting space, and kind of to dovetail all of this a little bit back to like my Enlightenment era comment and stuff. It's like I think one of the things that like what really gets me a bit about the science, like intelligence stuff, is that there's sort of it's very view a little bit of like view from nowhere, or like this sort of weird. It's sort of spoken about as if there's a measure of it that's a measure, and you could say, okay, moral. You can qualitatively say more or less, or quantitatively get at performance, but it's like, are you using it as a is the word? Are you using it as a like
the actual use of it is quite varied. And when people saying, okay, you can assess multiple pathways to a goal, you can assess the means of achieving something. It can be complex goals, complex whatever. Like, okay, but then it's like there's other ways too of like, is there intelligence in how your liver is working? Is intelligence neuronal activity? There's these sort of different, very vastly unqualified. Like, is intelligence the feature of an organism? Is intelligence the feature of these sort of like unsituated takes on it? And I feel like I didn't recall or missed or I didn't see. I don't know if we finished the paper with they probably said first, but like what was their conclusion at the end? Did they like break down into these big categories of X, Y, Z?
Well,
like,
I don't think they really came to a conclusion. I think it was just like, here are the. I mean,
survey.
they came with the universal definition was just like kind of pushing together all the definitions and finding common words.
Yeah,
I mean, which is not, like I said, which is not going to cut it because there are so many things that we need to reconsider about it.
I think something that you said that were your own words and not the paper, but it's like it kind of depends on what you're trying to do with it. Like in the space of an intelligent person understanding, cultural and whatnot is there. If you're the machine and you're operating in this space, okay, it's there. But it's like, is that, to me, it feels like an obvious thing would be, is that really the same? Is that the same word?
Yeah,
but regardless of the word or not, I think the bigger thing that it gets at for me, what I didn't very well articulately say before, is there is a lot of important work to do, regardless of the word intelligence, but for the spaces, saying, okay, I'm not going to use the word intelligence, but in this arena, I would like to look at, explicitly state something and call it not intelligence, and just go from that. And I mean, that is happening. It's just, I think it points to a lacking of development in those spaces, particularly the human-related stuff, yes. But, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jesse. That was a good conversation. Well, let's follow up with that. I don't know if there's something that you want to read about intelligence or multiple intelligences, or, I know you're interested in that area. So why don't you let us know what you would like to cover in the meeting, and we can keep on there.
It's very related. Morgan's, the last thing I'll say, like Morgan's related about science history, philosophy stuff. A lot of the stuff I was saying is basically from that point of view, similar or not. So there are projects I want to do in this space specifically, and I will develop them out more as things come. So thanks for talking about it.
I would again just pitch Chalet's paper as a great one and one to read together because it's long and it's
maybe that's the next thing for like the Cognition Futures reading group after.
I think it's a great, I think that, because it's like at its heart, it has a challenge, right? So it's like, it's a benchmark. It's a challenge benchmark. And, but again, because it's this ill-defined topic, it's kind of by nature multidisciplinary and again, I think it's one of the most original, most original takes on it that's out there.
Abstract and reasoning corpus. That's what article is. Okay. Yeah, cool. We'll definitely revisit that.
All right. Well, thanks for attending. Keep in touch in the Slack, and see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Ask questions in the Slack and see you around.
Yeah. Cheers. Take care.
Take care.